1787. America was in her infancy. Despite the blazing victory of the Revolutionary War, many radical steps still had to be taken to forge the freedom of a new democracy. Tensions ran high among the colonists. The 13 newly formed states at times struggled with agreeing on things, and believe it or not, the Constitution itself was no exception. At the 1787 Constitutional Convention, several states actually refused to ratify the Constitution. Why? Because it was lacking a Bill of Rights. These states agreed to sign off on the new plan for the American government only if Congress promised to add protections for freedom of speech, religion, and the press. These individuals were escaping persecution themselves, and they realized that it was imperative for the future of their freedoms and the freedoms of all generations to come that such rights were explicitly stated and guaranteed. The result of this persistent movement sparked the Bill of Rights, and with it, the First Amendment. The First Amendment states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or the free exercise thereof, or in abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." I stand here today, 236 years later, eternally grateful for those who fought for such important issues before me so that I have the right to advocate for important issues myself. We, like the colonists forging the freedoms of a new democracy, must fight for the issues which we are passionate about to spark reform in our own communities. Today, we're going to delve into the significance of the First Amendment, the First Amendment's modern-day applications, and how we can all better utilize our First Amendment-given rights to become proponents for change. To begin, the foundation of the United States of America is the ardent belief that, as stated in the First Amendment, all people are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, including those mentioned in the First Amendment. As Americans, we believe that everyone, wherever they reside, should be entitled to these unalienable rights. Throughout history, we have utilized our God-given military prowess to defend the freedoms of those who can't defend themselves and ensure that the right to democracy is protected. Because of the First Amendment, we, as Americans, can fight for the issues which we believe in at home and abroad. It is imperative that both policymakers and civilians alike remember that these rights, above all else, are what we are fighting for. With that in mind, let's take a look at some of the modern applications of the First Amendment. We, as Americans, are privileged with the right to speak up, speak out, and speak freely on whatever we desire. We are free to exercise our religions in whatever legal way we deem appropriate. Our presses and online journalism platforms are free to publish what they know and believe to be true. And whenever it becomes necessary, we as people have the right to gather together in support of a cause and to petition our government for a redress of grievances. As time has passed, there have been new questions regarding the interpretation of the First Amendment. For example, did you know that every time you get behind the wheel of a vehicle, you are temporarily forfeiting a portion of your First Amendment rights? That's because using electronic communications devices or phones to communicate while driving is illegal. That verdict is born of a responsibility to ensure the safety of everyone on the road. More recently, courts have been faced with the decision of whether or not the use of smartphones during school hours should be made illegal. The decision sparks debate about whether or not it is constitutional, as phones are a form of communication. Coincidentally, this very issue is one that I have become very passionate about, and in response, I say, it's illegal to use phones while driving as they pose a significant risk of destruction due to distraction. In a similar way, using smartphones during school hours poses an almost equally weighted risk of destruction due to distraction. With that in mind, I believe that smartphones during school should be made illegal. In response to this increasing debate, I utilize my freedom to petition the government for a redress of grievances by contacting my government officials, which brings me to my final point. How can we better utilize the rights bestowed to us thanks to the First Amendment? The simple answer is that we must utilize our freedom of speech to speak up and fight for the issues which we are passionate about to spark change in our own communities. In my own life, I witnessed the devastating effects of smartphones on my peers, and therefore I have become a very passionate proponent of making them disallowed during school hours. Thanks to my First Amendment rights, I petitioned Governor Cox, our Lieutenant Governor, our congressmen and women, and our senators to consider the ramifications of smartphones on the teenage brain and consider penning bills for change. Because of my First Amendment rights, I also have the right to stand here today and speak in front of you. Because of the First Amendment, we can all become proponents for change, regardless of our age, personal history, or rank. Fellow concerned citizens, we must remember that the First Amendment is internationally significant. Because of the First Amendment, we can become proponents for change in our own communities. My call to action is this: discover what cause you are passionate about. Kindle the sparks of that passion into a radiant, glowing flame. And when it's ready, be prepared to toss your flame out into the raging firestorm that is our world. Because who knows? Maybe your flame will be just the one to light the forges of revolution. Thank you.